What is up, and happy Friday, Player Profiler Nation, or Player Prof Nation. I've been working on that. I was PP Nation didn't sound great. PP Nation sounded bad. How you guys doing? This is Player Profiler today with your host Brendon Booth. I am and always have been Brendon Booth. I got all the news for you. Well, I got most of the news that I could coagulate and put together in a half-hour show for you. We're talking OTAs ending and mandatory minicamps beginning. You know what mandatory minicamps beginning means? It means players holding out, and I've got news for you. We've got injury news. We've got contract news. I've got it all for you. That's this week on Player Profiler today. Let's get it. All right, I'm having trouble with the buttons. Here we go. Okay, so I have a new setup in my office. I've got multiple screens, but I've got the ability to put stuff together. So I still have to push the buttons myself, and sometimes I don't do it right. Anyway, I hope you all are having as good a week as I am. I have another show on another platform, and we were doing a live stream last night doing a Scott Fish Bowl 14 mock draft. And guess who popped into our stream to guest with us? None other than Scott Fish, the creator of the Scott Fish Bowl, the creator of League Safe for your dynasty leagues to get payments and he created Devi Fantasy Football. So that was pretty wild to have him in there. And also happy to report that I'm doing more on the Player Profiler News channel over here on YouTube. I've got a Tuesday show that I was just asked to get onto. It'll be with just me. I'm going to have lots of guests and stuff. It's on the fantasy football side of things. It's not player news. It's fantasy related. It's called the Dynasty Stock Exchange, and that should be firing up in about 2 weeks. So hopefully you're liked and subscribed and bell hit and all that stuff, so that you'll be around when I get started. Now, Brendon, what's gonna happen on Fridays? Don't worry. There are dozens of you who are worried, and you don't need to be. I will still be coming to you on Fridays with the player news. All right, so let's get into it. I don't know what should we do first. Should we talk about contract news? There's a big contract that landed yesterday, a big old bag, if you will, and that'll be our lead story. So we'll get to that in a bit. Let's start with mini camps. Mandatory mini camps were this week. Players are required to do that. Previous to that was a couple weeks of OTAs, on-field, basically very volunteer on-field team activities, and players aren't necessarily they're not mandated to go there, but per their contracts they are supposed to show up for mandatory mini camps, hence the word mandatory. There was one holdout. That would be Alvin Kamara. He did not show up for mandatory minicamp. Ian Rappaport has reported that Alvin Kamara's absence from the Thursday Saints minicamp is contract related. He wants more money. And this is worth monitoring. The Saints have a decent history of working out contracts to keep their roster together. Dennis Allen has done a good job of that. And an intentional move like this from Kamara's camp could set up for a parting of ways. Whether the Saints entertain Kamara's demands remains to be seen. It is worth noting that Christian McCaffrey did a contract extension, keeping him as the top paid running back in the league. Now, Alvin Kamara may see this as a signal and opportunity to push the running back market, both for himself and others. We've seen the last couple of years that running back market has kind of gone away. They're not really valued contract-wise. They're fairly replaceable. You can't really say that about Christian McCaffrey, and I don't think you can say that about Alvin Kamara. They're guys on that elite level that aren't necessarily replaceable. They're not they're dynamic players. If you have a guy who's good enough and sturdy enough to be given 250 handoffs a year and he just runs downhill between the tackles, those guys are replaceable. You can find lots of guys like that anywhere, but your Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, those kinds of dynamic running backs you don't really see very often. Last year he was the RB11 in fantasy football. He's currently being drafted as the RB17, and I have smashed him on a lot of my shows because he averaged 17 points per game in PPR leagues last year, which would put him right around the RB5, and he's being drafted as the RB17. So if you know anybody who plays fantasy football, give them a little gift. Write them a card, put a bow on it, and write draft Alvin Kamara because he will outplay his ADP, and hand it to them. Basically, if Kamara holds out, that means Kendre Miller, who was a rookie last year, dealt with some injuries, he would get a boost in the depth chart. So that's something that we should be looking out for. In other camp news, let's start with your defending champions, Kansas City Chiefs. While wide receiver Hollywood Brown was asked about, and one of the things about these mandatory minicamps is that because they're mandatory and the players have to be there, the players are compelled to do press conferences. So this is when most of the really like hearty, meaty stew of player quotes and coach quotes and stuff comes out, because that's when they're doing their press conferences. So Hollywood Brown was at the podium, and he mentioned about the speed of the Chiefs offense. Quote, "We're fast. We're definitely fast. We're going to put a lot of pressure on people for sure." I just think it's going to be exciting. I think everyone should be excited for it. I think the only people excited for it are going to be the Chiefs, because the Chiefs are entering that realm of the old New York Yankees, the current Los Angeles Dodgers, the Patriots, where it's time for somebody else. We all love football, and we watch a Super Bowl, and it feels like the Chiefs are always inevitable. And that's like the Patriots used to be. Like, what's the point of even watching if the Patriots are just going to win it all anyway? And the Chiefs have attained that. That's rare air. Congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs organization for getting to that point. But on the fan side of things, it's kind of boring. So Chiefs fans are looking for their team to have speed. All right, moving over into Green Bay. Green Bay has a very interesting and variegated wide receiver room. They've got Christian Watson, who had a few big, huge games in his rookie season, and didn't do much else last year because he was hurt. Romeo Doubs stepped up as a rookie as well and had a much better year last year. And then last year, Jaden Reed, rookie, came on the scene, as well as Dontavian Wicks. That's a lot of weapons. And so you're kind of looking for which of those four guys is going to become the Devontae Adams. Which one is going to elevate their game to the point where they are Jordan Love's main target. And jury's still out. But apparently Romeo Doubs has had a, quote, outstanding spring. So good on you, Romeo Doubs. Let's swing down to Carolina. Dave Canales he's the coach of the Carolina Panthers, and he's considered the quarterback whisperer. He's the one that kind of elevated Baker Mayfield last season. He gave, according to Joe Pearson, he gave a long, detailed answer when asked about which position battles he'll be tracking most closely at training camp, but he started his comments with tight end and running back. Now, both of those are very interesting because the Panthers went out and they drafted rookies at each of the positions. Jatavian Sanders, tight end from Texas, they drafted that tight end, and Jonathan Brooks, running back, they brought him in. He is coming off of a knee injury, so he is trying to work his way back in. A lot of people aside from the injury, considered Brooks the best running back in the class. And the Panthers have Chuba Hubbard, and Chuba Hubbard is not quite looked at as an efficient running back. They at the beginning of the season last year, the Panthers challenged Chuba Hubbard by bringing in another running back. Hubbard eventually took over due to injury and finished the season, and he was all right to end the season. But there aren't too many worlds where people think that Chuba Hubbard is more talented than Jonathan Brooks. So Jonathan Brooks gets over his injury. It then becomes a matter of time before he takes over. That's a battle that started at minicamp this week, and so we're going to be watching that. In Chicago, Rome Odunze's preference for learning on offense during his break is to get the playbook installs and run the route tree on the field by having his mom or dad say the play call to him before he lines up and runs the route. Is that just not the most wholesome thing that you've ever heard? Dude is a stud. University of Washington, lead receiver for the last 2 years. High first round draft pick to the Bears. Pair him up with Caleb Williams. Get him in a wide receiver room with DJ Moore and Keenan Allen. And mom and dad are there drilling him. They are his flashcards, and that's such a great story. You don't hear that a lot. Good on you, mom and dad. Great parents. Okay. This is kind of big. We're talking Minnesota, and according to Kevin Seifert from ESPN, quote, not a surprise. Okay. But Kevin O'Connell said that Sam Darnold will be the Vikings' #1 quarterback entering training camp, but the first 2 weeks of camp will be competitive for many positions, he said. So obviously nothing is written in stone. Yeah. So Sam Darnold getting the first team snaps with the Vikings. JJ McCarthy, number 11 pick in the first round of the NFL draft, national champion from University of Michigan. Not necessarily the starter. I think it's a good move for the Vikings. There's also a similar battle going on in New England where Jacoby Brissett is the quarterback one and Drake May is taking the second team snaps. I think those are good moves. Now, for a long time, the thing that happened would be a quarterback would be drafted and go to the team, hold a clipboard for a season or 2 or 3 or 4 before the veteran quarterback moved on, and then the quarterback took over. And you had a lot of successful quarterbacks that way. And then something shifted in the NFL paradigm, and quarterbacks started being drafted very, very early in the first round, being paid a ton of money and being inserted into the starting role and forced to win immediately. Look at Bryce Young. Bryce Young was a highly competitive quarterback from Alabama, drafted first overall in 2023, thrust into the Panthers' starting position, and did okay. The Panthers were bad, but he was drafted by a bad team, and he had an okay season. But the scuttlebutt is that Bryce Young was a bust, whereas C.J. Stroud was basically gifted a worst to first defense and team, and he is the poster boy, the golden child for one of the best rookie seasons of all time. So sometimes quarterbacks benefit. I go back all the way to the 1990s. There was a quarterback named Rich Gannon, and he was a backup for Minnesota for a long, long time. Quarterback out of Delaware, and nobody thought much of him. He goes to the Oakland Raiders and suddenly sets the world on fire, wins 2 MVPs, puts together a team that, other than some bad bounces, ref calls, things like that, could have become a dynasty. There was a possibility they could have won 3 Super Bowls in a row with Rich Gannon, Tim Brown, Jerry Rice. But Gannon bided his time before he was ready, and that was sometime in his 30s. Let's also look at Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield was a high draft pick, goes to the Browns. The Browns and the Jets seem to do this all the time. They draft guys really high. Those guys don't work out. They go somewhere else. 4 or 5 years down the line, boom, they break out. Baker Mayfield, behind Dave Canales last year in Tampa Bay, had his breakout season. Now, Sam Darnold, high draft pick for the New York Jets. He's been in that system. He went to Carolina. He's been in that system. He went to San Francisco. He's been in that system. Bounced around, held a clipboard, learned the NFL, learned offenses, and now he's going to be entering as the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings. He's got this young kid, J.J. McCarthy, nipping at his heels, trying to insert his game in there. But Darnold is a veteran. He's in a Kevin O'Connell offense. We saw what Kirk Cousins could do in the Kevin O'Connell offense. We saw what the backups did when Kirk Cousins got hurt. Sam Darnold is stepping into a beautiful situation, a very advantageous situation. And this could be the year that Sam Darnold becomes the top 10 quarterback that everybody hoped that he could be when he was coming out of college. So keep your eye on that. Just a little theory I have, and I wanted to share it with you. All right. The New York Giants. Hey, can we talk about quarterbacks who have been around for a little bit, struggled, and may now just be hitting their stride? Let's talk about Daniel Jones. Okay, Daniel Jones is in a very similar situation, and apparently Malik Neighbors is going to be the alpha wide receiver that brings that team, that wide receiver core into play, and somebody else has been excelling in that camp, and that's Jalen Hyatt, who was a rookie last season. He's a deep ball threat, and Daniel Jones, if he can come back and play healthy, he's got a new running back. It could be a really good situation for Daniel Jones. Okay, Buffalo Bills. Khalil Shakir, he's been hurt. He had a sleeve on his left leg after his injury from Tuesday. He's trying to get back on the field. He will be the Buffalo Bills slot receiver. They did draft Keon Coleman, and Josh Allen needs some targets to throw to. James Cook is one of those, and there was a story surrounding James Cook that he was dropping balls, and that's been a concern, and that's something that he's had to something that he's going to have to overcome if he wants to reach the elite level that he aspires to. All right. More on the Chiefs, because you want us to talk about the Chiefs. So Hollywood Brown, he's developing early chemistry with Patrick Mahomes, which is scary. Xavier Worthy is playing really well, or he's been watching since OTAs. They're being cautious with his hamstring injury, but Justin Watson, wide receiver for the Chiefs, reports that Xavier Worthy has been picking up the playbook very well, learning all three positions in the wide receiver room and doing mental reps. So that is good news for the Chiefs, because they need to get better. We all know that the Chiefs need to get better. New Orleans. We got a bunch of stuff coming out of New Orleans this week. Spencer Rattler, rookie quarterback, and Jake Haener, second-year quarterback, have been switching back and forth between the second team and third team throughout OTAs. And apparently Spencer Rattler took over with the second team. So that's good news for him. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield. Just talked about him. Huge year last year, put himself back on the map, had a really, really great year. And now we are looking at a different receiving core. Chris Godwin, healthy, sliding into his natural slot role. Mike Evans, he's the Frank Gore of wide receivers. You just put him out there, forget about him, and he's going to come out with 1,000 yards, and he's done that 10 seasons in a row. And rookie wide receiver Jalen McMillan out of the University of Washington. In 2022, he was Rome Odunze's partner, and they both had huge years. McMillan got hurt last year, which would have been his final year, so he was hoping to have a huge one. He got hurt. Jalen Polk took over and had himself a good enough year to get drafted by the New England Patriots. But McMillan is healthy, and he's in Tampa Bay Buccaneers camp. And, quote, it's pretty safe to say that he was the offense's star during Wednesday's practice. He and Baker Mayfield have already begun to develop a strong connection, as evidenced by the first play of the Bucs 11-on-11 period. McMillan, the third-round pick at Tampa Bay, got open near the left sideline, and Mayfield threaded a perfect throw to him for a nice chunk of yardage. He went on to make 3 or 4 more catches throughout the rest of practice. So watch out for Jalen McMillan. The guy is long, he's fast, and he can play. And if he and Baker Mayfield put together a nice little relationship, Baker's got Godwin, KG veteran, Mike Evans, KG veteran, Jalen McMillan, young athletic stud. It could be good for the Buccaneers. New England, I just talked about that. Quote, the eyes have said for weeks that Jalen Polk is a smooth, sudden mover with the necessary twitch to separate, but he wasn't landing on the practice box score during team drills until recently. In the 2 mini camp sessions, he has come alive. Polk had 5 catches in 2 sessions, including the walk-off touchdown and a crafty stick nod route. So he lit up the mandatory mini camp, and that's good news for him. More rookies. Washington. Jaden Daniels. He's learning how to be a pro. That's the biggest thing for him. And he gets to the facility apparently around 5:45 in the morning. He walks through in the bubble and to watch film early. And he's still learning the playbook and trying to grasp it all. And Luke McCaffrey is right by his side. Now, let's talk Luke McCaffrey a little bit. Pedigree, bloodlines. His dad was a Super Bowl champion. His brother is Christian freaking McCaffrey. And Luke McCaffrey had himself a hell of a combine where I think it was Daniel Jeremiah was comparing him to Garrett Wilson. And he is now in the Washington Commanders wide receiver room along with Terry McLaurin, and Jahan Dotson could be a sneaky name to kind of become a huge dude in the NFL. In Green Bay, Marshawn Lloyd spoke very highly of how helpful and supportive Josh Jacobs and A.J. Dillon have been. About A.J. Dillon, he said, it's been amazing. Like you said, AJ knows everything. He knows the whole playbook. He helps me and Josh, so if we need something, we'll go to AJ. AJ is just so supportive. He's a massive human being. He helps us through everything. If I do something good on the field, he'll let me know I do something good. If something was like, he'll let me know. It's good to have AJ, a guy like AJ, to be able to help me through this whole time. So Marshawn Lloyd, running back out of USC, watch out for him. If something happens to Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd is there. And it says that his focus over training camp, over the next 5 weeks before training camp, is going to be on pass catching, which is an area that he firmly excelled in at USC. He was basically considered a good pass catching threat coming into the draft by the people who pay attention. All right, let's get a word from our fearless leader, Matthew Kelly, and then we'll get to our top story.
This episode is brought to you by Player Profiler, the Dynasty Deluxe package. The rankings are the best in the industry. It includes strategy mode where you can say, hey, change the rankings to be win now. Oh, change the rankings to be productive struggle. There's also a draft planner to help to strategize where you should take players, because the draft planner also includes ADP. There's a trade finder where we look up on My Fantasy League and we see trades that are done, including a particular player. Then there's a trade analyzer where you can plug in draft picks, players, and we assign a lifetime value to draft picks out 5 years. The best thing about our trade analyzer, it can't be gamed with volume. And there's mock draft data to see right now what's the market for player X versus player Y, including in the fall when very few mock drafts are happening. And our dynasty guide, The Dynasty Dominator would cost you $10 on Amazon, but you get it for free with Dynasty Deluxe, and you get our rookie guide for free, a $25 value. So you get all of that for $45. I mean, it's a great deal.
All right, everybody. Our top story, the contract for Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence signs a 5-year contract, $275 million with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And basically what I wanted to talk about was where that slots him in the quarterback contract pantheon at the moment in the NFL. Right now, it's the highest money along with Joe Burrow, but his yearly payout and the guarantee is not quite Burrow's level. So in the Twitter sphere the last couple of days, yesterday specifically, a lot of people were doing posts that were Trevor Lawrence's stats alongside somebody else's stats. And so there was one that was him and Joe Burrow, and it was talking about how aligned they were in contract, but Joe Burrow much, much better on the field than Trevor Lawrence. Another one showed Daniel Jones and how over their careers, their statistics are almost identical. But Daniel Jones isn't getting paid as much. So if Daniel Jones has a huge year, could that mean that he's got a big contract coming to him? Now, I wanted to talk about quarterback salaries and run down the top 16, and this is by yearly value. So Derek Carr, Saints quarterback, he's getting $37.5 million a year. Aaron Rodgers is 15th at tied $37.5 million a year. Matthew Stafford, $40 million a year at number 14. Daniel Jones, number 13. He's looking at $40 million per year as well. Dak Prescott, he is next in line to get the big payday. He's making $40 million per year now. He's looking at either signing an extension with Dallas or heading into free agency, and we could see him set the new market. Josh Allen, $43 million a year. Patrick Mahomes, $45 million a year. Kirk Cousins, $45 million a year. Deshaun Watson, $46 million per year. So Deshaun Watson is making more money than Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is winning Super Bowls, and Deshaun Watson is struggling to stay on the field. It tells you a little bit about contracts. Kyler Murray, $46.1 million a year. Getting into the 50s, number 6, Jalen Hurts is making $51 million per year. Lamar Jackson, incumbent reigning MVP, $52 million a year. Justin Herbert, $52.5 million per year. Jared Goff, hashtag Novato boys. He's my hometown boy, $53 million per year to run the Detroit Lions. Trevor Lawrence slots in with his new contract, his new deal at $55 million per year. And Joe Burrow, $55 million per year as well. But he, like I said, he has a bigger bonus. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that these contracts elevate. So you'll have a guy who'll sign a deal that's $45 million a year, and then a guy like Dak Prescott will get his deal, and it'll keep stacking up. We watched it with Derek Carr. He signed a contract a few years ago as an extension with the Raiders, and it made him the highest paid quarterback at the time. And everybody freaked out. Oh my God, how can Derek Carr be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL right now? And eventually, within weeks, somebody else signed a bigger contract. Now he's in the 16 range. So it happens like that. So everybody flipping out about how much Trevor Lawrence is being paid. That's just the way that it works. If you are a quarterback that's in the top 10, 15 in the entire NFL, you're going to get a big bag because that's what the salary cap is for. It's to pay these quarterbacks. And then eventually and very quickly, you are going to be surpassed. And we just need to just let it happen. There's a similar there's a phrase that I think of a lot of times in the off season when people are talking about should they sign this free agent for this much, and the fans really get into it in the forums and the message boards and on Twitter and all that stuff, and they get really bent out of shape. I guess it's just performative outrage, or they need something to be upset about, because what I always say is pay them. It's not my money. So that's going to do it. Trevor Lawrence got paid. It's not my money. I'm happy for the man. And you guys have a great week. I'll be back with you next week to wrap up all of the OTAs. And again, like, subscribe, hit the bell, share it around, and we'll talk to you next week. And look out for my new show, Dynasty Stock Exchange, if you play Dynasty Fantasy Football. And real quickly before I go out, I apologize for the chaos that ensued when somebody was knocking at my door in the middle of a live stream. So I need to go get to the bottom of that. Have a great week.